When buying property abroad, investors can expect either a constant but small income from its rental or capital gains from resale. The second option is considered more risky. However, the potential income in this case can be much higher. It is about it that will be discussed in this article. Buying a property and then selling it so that the difference in price covers all costs and makes a profit. The strategy looks very simple, but this simplicity is deceptive. Real estate can increase in value due to the general rise in the market. Local development of infrastructure, as the development project progresses, or due to improved performance during renovation. However, the value of real estate can not only grow, but fall. Why is the overseas real estate market attractive for investors in capital gains? What are the risks and features? Investor fears are now largely related to the downturn in business activity caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The sectors associated with tourism, beauty, entertainment, catering, and some trade sectors have been hit the hardest. At first glance, the real estate market can also be expected to decline, as it was during the financial crisis of 2007 to 2010. However, almost 2 years after the start of the pandemic, it can be concluded that the current economic downturn in 2020 is different from previous ones. The early 2010s saw unprecedented growth in the residential real estate market in Europe and the US, culminating in 2005 to 2006. Low interest rates on mortgage loans, an insignificant down payment, coupled with soft requirements for borrowers, have opened the real estate market, including foreign real estate, to a large number of buyers. The British were especially active, as a rule, acquiring resort property in the Mediterranean countries, in the hope that over time it would become their second residence. At the same time, the loan was issued against the security of the main housing in the UK, and the acquired housing was rented out, which, to one degree or another, compensated for mortgage payments. This model became so popular that by 2007, British consumer debt exceeded the country's GDP. In other European countries, the situation was not so critical, but the high debt burden of the population was noted everywhere. The mortgage crisis that erupted in the United States in 2007 dealt a significant blow to the global real estate market, but it had the most negative impact on the economies of countries directly related to the American credit and financial system. Not surprisingly, it hit the UK hardest. Floating interest on loans, dependent on fluctuations in the refinancing rate of the Bank of England, also played its role. The increase in BBR led to an increase in the cost of loans. Borrowers were forced to get rid of the acquired housing. It brought down the real estate market. In addition to Great Britain, the fastest rates of price reduction were observed in Ireland, Norway, Austria, Finland, and Spain. Real estate liquidity also dropped sharply. Today, the reasons for the economic downturn are completely different, and the real estate market feels confident. Immediately after the lifting of the strict quarantine, the number of transactions in the housing market of most European countries has increased significantly, and there has been an increase in the cost of housing. According to the Global Property Guide, according to the results of the third quarter of 2021, out of 60 key countries, the cost of housing in annual terms increased in 54 countries and decreased in only 6. Demand has increased in almost all European countries. A strong jump in housing prices occurred in Montenegro, Sweden, Australia, the Netherlands. The housing market of the UAE also shows a steady rise. Residential property prices in Dubai are skyrocketing by 20–25%. Which is the best performance since 2014, although the Asian housing market shows slow growth. For example, in Thailand it amounted to only 0.44%. However, according to experts, the potential for increasing turnover in Thai real estate is quite high. After the COVID calm in 2020, the recent increase in activity is especially noticeable. These trends are expected to continue over the next 2 years, contributing to further price increases. Deloitte experts say in a review of the European residential real estate market. Now, in a situation of general uncertainty, real estate remains one of the most reliable and attractive investments. In addition to global crises, there is a danger of local downturns in real estate markets in individual countries or regions. Economic and political fluctuations are forcing investors around the world to be more prudent about potential acquisitions. In order for a novice investor to navigate the global market, experts recommend applying several evaluation criteria. First of all, you should pay attention to the ratio of profitability from rental property to its price. The higher it is, the higher the potential for price growth. There is a simple rule here. The high rental yield offsets the cost of a loan to purchase a property, thereby reducing interest costs. This means that servicing a loan from a bank will cost less than renting similar housing. This situation stimulates the demand for the purchase of real estate and pushes prices up. An acceptable level of rental yield is in the range of 3% to 11% of the cost of housing. If the yield falls below 3%, then investing in such real estate is undesirable. Increasing it to 11% is a sign of significant upside potential. There are exceptions to this rule on a broad scale of the world market. For example, in countries with an underdeveloped mortgage market, this pattern will be broken. This rule does not fully apply to regulated markets. If we cite European countries as an example, then housing prices are growing here, despite a modest rental yield of 4-7% per annum. By the way, the cost of rental housing, according to Deloitte estimates, jumped by 10-28% in 2020. However, rather strict regulation of the rental market, a number of restrictions and high taxes eats up part of the rental income. In addition, there are promising locations where the growth in real estate prices is due not so much to economic factors as to the development of infrastructure. These may be newly developed areas or depressed areas with a low level of income from real estate today, but with development plans that will increase the cost of square meters. Another evaluation criterion is the cost of real estate construction. When housing prices far exceed the cost of building it, it signals a likely decline. Low construction costs encourage developers to create new square meters, and increased supply is known to drive prices down. However, in jurisdictions where new housing developments are restricted by law, low building costs will be less likely to be a downside. Thus, Europe is replete with building codes and restrictions, but this does not lead to lower housing prices, despite the fact that they are usually much higher than construction costs. Another criterion for assessing the real value of real estate is its availability. Moreover, high prices do not always indicate a weak growth potential, just as low cost does not necessarily promise growth. It all depends on the indicators of living standards in specific countries or regions. First, it is important to pay attention to the income of the average resident of a city or other area whose real estate is interesting. This is especially true when it comes to expensive squares in large cities. For example, the capital of Belgium is clearly underestimated. The country has a fairly high level of income, but the cost of housing is comparable to the prices of Eastern Europe. Secondly, one should take into account the level of the country's GDP per capita, namely the ratio of the cost of housing to GDP. The lower this indicator, the less housing is overvalued, which means that there is potential for growth. To minimize risks and most reliably assess the attractiveness of real estate, these criteria should be considered in a comprehensive manner, taking into account currency risks. When purchasing real estate for the purpose of further resale, it is necessary to take into account its liquidity. That is, the possibility of prompt sale. It is the high liquidity of housing in such European cities as Vienna, Geneva, Paris, Amsterdam, London, Berlin, Munich, Frankfurt, Rome, Milan, Barcelona that makes them investment attractive. Today, experts note the explosive growth in housing prices in Amsterdam. Within a few months, the average cost of apartments in the city center soared from €350,000 to €500,000. There are few offers, so sellers arrange auctions, as a result of which prices sometimes rise by another €100,000. On the outskirts of Amsterdam, The situation is calmer. Here you can find cheaper apartments from €350,000. The capital of the Netherlands is followed by Rotterdam, with less intensive but still strong growth. Further price increases are predicted for another 1–2 years, so investors still have a chance to jump into the last carriage. Acquisition of real estate in many European countries remains a profitable investment. However, you should not count on a quick resale. High taxes on income from the sale of housing, reaching 70% in the first 3 years after its purchase, eat up a significant part of the increase in the value of the object. Therefore, the acquisition of real estate for the purpose of resale in Europe is a long game. At least 5 years will have to wait. In this case, you also need to think about the operation of the purchased housing, taking into account utility costs and current taxes. Most often, such real estate is rented out or provided for use by friends or relatives. Often, housing is purchased for children entering European universities, after which the apartment can be sold at a higher price and without huge tax payments. However, these are special cases.